Well, welcome on in, everyone. As you can see, once again, I've got my Phillies black cap on, and I usually wear this when there's dark times in Philadelphia sports, and obviously this past year, since the Phillies a disastrous end to the World Series. Well, before they could have gotten to the World Series, sorry. And then obviously the Eagles took another early exit in the playoffs, so we failed to repeat as the Super Bowl champion. And obviously the last couple of weeks has been quite rough as far as the Eagles are concerned. Lot of changes, a lot of coaching changes. So bear with us, everyone. We tried to find some positivity towards the end of today's show, but I'm not too sure how that's going to go. So just welcome in, brother Drew. Thanks once again for tagging in as well. How are you guys sort of feeling these last couple of weeks? Obviously, I suppose the biggest piece of news this last week was obviously Jeff Stoutland abruptly leaving the Eagles. We've seen various sort of reports coming out that it was due to he was getting overridden with decisions to how to run the run game by Sirianni and Kevin Patullo. I've seen a couple of stats where the run game looked better after Jeff Stoutland had those powers taken away from him, I suppose, halfway through the season. But I mean, Jeff Stoutland has been so valuable to the Eagles, since his time. Do we have a Super Bowl without Jeff Stoutland? He played a massive part about that O-line. Last year's Super Bowl, do we have that without Jeff Stoutland? Because he played, he's done, obviously the development of the offensive lineman from the Eagles from him has been massive. Look what he did for Jordan Mailata, turning him from a rugby player into, one of the best linemen in the NFL. So how are you guys feeling that over these last few weeks? Sean Mannion has come in as the offensive coordinator now. We don't know if Landon Dickerson and Lane Johnson are returning for the Eagles O-line because of obviously Landon Dickerson was banged up a lot last year. Lane Johnson has always been considering retirement the last few years. So I'll start with you. Just how are you feeling about these last few weeks? Because man, it's been a difficult time.
Yeah, it's been rough the last few weeks. Ever since the playoff loss to the 49ers, how dreadful we looked. It's been rough. We saw Adam Schefter come out a couple of weeks ago saying that look for more changes to be made. And then when the news broke of Jeff Stoutland, Schefter tweeted, quote tweeted or whatever and said, there it is. So Schefter said that, a week before it even happened. So Schefter had his inside sources, obviously. I'm pissed. I am. And the thing about it is, what we were all talking about when we were looking for an offensive coordinator, we all said, well, the one thing that you're going to have, that would make this job attractive, you got the best offensive line coach in the game in your corner. And now we don't. And you were talking about the development of players. We had two good things come out of the Chip Kelly coaching era. One is Jeff Stoutland, two is Lane Johnson. There were two guys taken ahead of Lane Johnson in that draft, in Eric Fisher and Luke Joeckel. And Lane Johnson has head and shoulders outperformed both those cats. Both those cats have been out of the league for years. And not only, you can say it's easy to develop a number 4 overall pick. Yeah, I'll give you that. But what about the guys like Jason Kelce? Kelce played 2 years under Howard Mudd, and he credits his entire career to Jeff Stoutland. What about a journeyman guard like Evan Mathis, who was here with Stout, during the Chip Kelly era, turned him into a Pro Bowl player. I don't think Evan was an All-Pro, but he was a Pro Bowl player.
Good player.
And then you take the injuries. This is something I said. We all look back at the 2017. The biggest injury, obviously, Carson Wentz. To me, the number 2 biggest injury, you could say Carson was 1A and this one was 1B, was Jason Peters. And he takes Hippolyte Vitae, and they just keep on moving, guys. Didn't miss a step. We all thought Isaac Seumalo would be a starting guard on that team. He struggled. What'd they do? They plugged in Wisniewski. And he was part of that line. this is tough. It's going to be tough to find somebody to fill those shoes. Those are ginormous, gigantic shoes you're going to have to fill. And not only from, I guess, a culture standpoint, but a development standpoint. Like you could give him a guy who had never played football before. All he had ever played was rugby. Didn't even know any of the some of the biggest details of the game. He did not know it, and
Yeah.
turned him into a Pro Bowl, All Pro left tackle. It sucks, and I wonder, you know, Jordan said this week while he was at the Super Bowl festivities that he doesn't think Lane will retire, that he thinks Lane will come back. Seen a quote, somebody, I think it may have been Baldy or somebody, said that Lane's going to look and see who they hire and make his decision from there, give it a fair shot. But the big shocker was the Landon Dickerson news coming out, people speculating whether or not he would retire at the age of 27. We heard Kelsey say this week when he was on with, I think, Ike and Spike, say that, it was like Landon said there was times he just really couldn't get moving this year. That's how banged up
Yeah,
he was.
you could see it on the field. It was evident.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I don't know if, it all started in, training camp when he tweaked his knee. He didn't, he was there for the start of the season. What did he have, he had it scoped, or was that it, Drew?
Yeah, I think at first they were worried that it could be like a season ender, that it could be like an ACL or something. And I want to say he may have even had some like very minor procedure, but I think it was I think it was only like a 3.5 week gap from like when it happened to, banner night against the Cowboys. So it was a pretty
Wasn't it like a torn meniscus? Or something.
Yeah, something
I
like
remember
that,
Spike talking about it. You could either have the season-ending procedure, or you could have like a minor procedure, which only took you out for a few weeks. And I remember he made it back, didn't he? Because he had that procedure.
He had the procedure one day. The next day, they're doing the joint practice with the Browns, and he was walking around with a sleeve on his knee. He wasn't even on crutches or anything.
Yeah.
Handing out beers to some of the guys, and stuff like that. And this is my thing. We look at Lane Johnson. Lane Johnson is a physical freak. Like, this guy's a right tackle, and he's just built like, he is solid as a rock. Where you look at a guy like Landon, he's a big, huge guy, but he's a little more on the chunkier side. So maybe, I don't know, maybe my thing is, buddy, I've never played a snap of anything past, high school, but like, maybe he should, if he does want to come back, look at a better off-season workout plan, get in the lab with Lane and do some of the workouts and stuff like that, treat your body a little better and watch what you eat more, stuff like that. I don't know. That's just me speculating. I hope he does come back, but if he's done, hey, we got a Super Bowl out of him, went to 2, won 1. It was a second round pick. It was worth it all. But yeah, I'm pissed about the Stoutland thing. I really am.
It's a massive loss. I'll let you come in now, Drew, but it's just quick. It's a massive loss because, like, I know last year Jeff Stoutland lost. I think he lost one of his coaches, of his like offensive line staff. They went somewhere, and it's not just him. It's like it's everyone that comes below him then that helps him build that room and puts the plans together and everything. So it's going to be a massive. That's probably Howie Roseman's biggest obstacle this offseason, obviously the draft and making the correct draft picks and stuff, because to replace Jeff Stoutland, it's massive. Whenever I felt like bad about the Eagles, like, oh, they're not going to have a good season or they're having a terrible season, you could always count on, well, at least we got Jeff Stoutland coming back next year, because he's going to keep the offensive line stable. And now we don't. So Howie's got a long road ahead of him, and then trying to replace Landon Dickerson, if that happens, that's going to be massive as well. So yeah, so Drew, what's your thoughts on all this?
Yeah, so quick moment of levity, because obviously it hasn't been a fun couple of weeks. I'll actually add a third thing to come out of Chip's time with the Eagles. I always have a soft spot for Nelson Aguilar after he balled out in the Super Bowl. So we can throw Nelly a bone there. But no, it's been a rough couple of weeks, and honestly, I think when it came out Wednesday night, like, it felt like almost on Twitter, like a funeral type atmosphere. Like we had all, kind of lost like and obviously, Stout seems, in good health and is not, will still, be doing something somewhere, but it was like we'd lost, like a good friend who would kind of, become a part of the city and had let us into his, life. And you could see how much, he cared about his players and, impacted those players. I made this I made this analogy a couple weeks ago when, there was debate about, before even, all this happened with Stoutland, of is the, offensive coordinator job attractive or not. And, obviously, I would argue the results have shown that, I was wrong here. But I said at the time, I thought it was attractive because I kind of compared it to, say like Brian Dable taking that Titans job, like that's working at, that's almost equivalent to like working at a startup. Like you're going to get to like build it like totally from scratch. You're going to have a ton of freedom, but you don't have a lot
Yeah.
around here. And if, you take a job, with the Eagles, you have resources and all at your disposal. So in terms of kind of that, like analogy. And essentially, for the past like 2.5 weeks, like the Eagles to me are a franchise that we would consider, like as far as like NFL standards go, like established, like a Fortune 500 company, and they have hired and made decisions as if they are, a startup to me. And sometimes there are times where like that can be exactly, what you need. If things feel
Yeah.
stale, for someone to come in and, listen to, a bunch of ideas from people and be like, okay, so like, thank you, but we're doing none of that essentially. And then just start making, a bunch of changes. So that can work, but it feels to me like it feels to me a lot at once. Like you combined a lot of
Oh,
ingredients together, but I don't know that there's a plan to, actually produce. I don't know that there's a good, path to actually producing a dish that, tastes of high quality. So yeah,
yeah.
in terms of stout and all, one thing I was thinking about the other day, in addition to his offensive line development, I think back to the 2023 draft when Isaac Sayamalu had just left in free agency, and we kind of had a gap along the offensive line there, and Kelsey had confirmed that he was coming back. So like Cam Jurgens was still, blocked at center. So, but I remember the thought a lot of the time was like, do we need to draft, like a lineman who can kind of like plug and play for Sayamalu? Like what if Cam Jurgens, can't play right guard
Mhm.
and whatnot. And I feel like a lot of that time, like the kind of like prevailing thought was, well, like, okay, like we have Jeff Stoutland, like he could help him, like he could help him at least, do it for a year. And I'm bringing all that up to set up the fact that like, you can make a case that, if you didn't have, someone like that, maybe Jalen Carter isn't an Eagle right now, because
Yeah.
maybe the Eagles, I mean, I remember I was into the idea of like Paris Johnson, who I know ended up going to the Cardinals, of like I feel like in addition to taking shots on certain linemen in the draft, like a Project in Mailata and whatnot, you can argue that the kind of trust and faith in Stout really allowed the team at times to invest in other resources, too, and all. So I think his legacy just really goes in a lot of like crazy awesome directions. Now I'd say look, he's obviously there's no replacing Jeff Stoutland. I guess one thing that I would just kind of like maybe try to latch on to a little bit is like Lane, if he does come back, and my gut says he will, has like 13 years of Jeff Stoutland teachings. Like Mailata has like 8 years of
Mhm.
Stoutland teachings. Like Landon Dickerson, Cam
Yeah.
Jurgens, like 4-5 years. So I don't think it's not like those guys are gonna forget
Yeah.
everything he's taught them. Where if the offensive line is not good next year, I think the primary reason would be that just like the players have declined and are just a little more and are just beat up and can't answer the bell. But no, it's a massive loss, and it's a shame. If I don't think my gut says I think he's still. I think like kind of like hard feelings, if there are any, will mend over time. But it would, and
Yeah.
obviously we don't know what's in Stout's head right now. But it would be a shame if he, kind of like views the final 2 months of his time here as like if he kind of latches on to that, and it sours the overall
Yep.
13 years, because
Yeah,
obviously
yeah.
he just doesn't deserve for that to be the case.
No, it'd be a big shame for the way to end that way if there was like bad feelings because of he's had those powers taken away from him, and so yeah, Jeff Stoughton, that's a massive loss, and I think if Vic Fangio had ended up retiring on top, that would have been just like the icing on the cake. So how do you guys feel about, obviously, Sean Mannion now is the new offensive coordinator? Drew, I'll probably start with you with this, because obviously I know you've got a connection that to do with the Bucks that have got some opinions about Sean Mannion and his staff that going to be coming in. So what's your initial short thoughts on Sean Mannion? We've heard a lot about him. He's promising. He did a good job with Jordan Love and Malik Willis, but I don't think Jordan Love and Malik Willis looked anything special last year. I know Malik Willis did good stepping in when he had to, but Jordan Love I don't think was amazing last year. So I don't have too much confidence in that. My only thing is that he's young, but he hasn't called plays before. So what's your thoughts, Drew, on Sean Mannion and his coaching staff that he's going to be bringing in? And we'll go to you then, just after Drew.
Yeah, I think, and real quick on Fangio too. Obviously, I trust Jeff. I trust Jeff McLean. He's been like all over this reporting, but like, do we like the Eagle now? The Eagles technically, I think, like when like an employee already works for you, you don't have to confirm that he's like officially staying and still your coordinator. But are we like 1,000% positive that just because? And I don't want to like play like sourcing game and stuff, but are we like I'll feel a lot better that I know Vic is coming back when we see him do some like off-season press conference. Like, do I think he is coming back? Like, yes, but I feel like there's still like a little like wiggle room for him to just be like, you know what, guys, like I just I just don't feel like doing this anymore. I think he will be back, but I don't know, maybe that just speaks to kind of like all like just just feels like there's been so many like bad thing after bad thing that's happened right now. Yeah, as far as Mannion goes, look, I wanted to, when more names started coming off as like not options, I wanted to hire Jim Bob Cooter, which I'm sure Justin
We were all
might be able to
up.
weigh in
We were
on.
all cooted up.
At some point, my thought was that like I didn't think you necessarily needed a total overhaul. I thought you needed someone who could have like a 15% better feel for play calling in the moment than Patullo, and who could make halftime adjustments. And I didn't think you necessarily needed to break the entire system at all. Now, to your point, Adam, I do think the fact that Malik Willis, who, a couple years ago when he first came into the league looked like a total disaster, and then, a couple spot games this year looked good. I do think that's promising. I think that, speaks to some of Sean Mannion's chops and all. My biggest worry with Mannion is I think 50 years from now, when he's like retired and you like Google his like Wikipedia page or whatnot, like it will probably at some point say like, that he was a head coach somewhere. And I think he will probably be like, overall, he will be considered like a successful coach to an extent. My worry is I don't know that we will get the best version of him. Like, it almost reminds me of like Shane Steichen with the Chargers, where he wasn't as good at the job with them as he was with us. Kind of similar, like Kellen with the Cowboys. And then I guess, and look, it's one source, and it's obviously like if someone asked us about Kevin Patullo, I'd honestly expect us to have like a very similar report where like it's one person with a vested interest coming off the season they
Yeah.
had. But as far as bringing in Josh Grizzard as the passing game coordinator, I have a couple folks who I know down in Tampa who are pretty close to that team, who just did not have particularly good things to say. That the offense was a mess and all this past year. Obviously Baker regressed as the year went on.
Yeah.
So we'll see. Like, could it work? Sure, but it is not the route that I would have gone with it for certain.
How are you feeling, Just? Because we didn't get Jim Bob Cooter, and obviously he's worked under Shane Steichen. He knew Sirianni, and his stats and stuff that come out looked very promising. That he could fit well with Jalen and this offense. So it's a bit of a shame that we didn't get that guy, because I know everyone's all the afternoon show and WIP were all cooted up. We were all cooted up. So how you feeling, Just, about Sean Mannion?
My theory is a complete 180 from Drew's. I think the Eagles are frustrated with having to look for an offensive coordinator year in and year out. When the team plays well, does well, goes deep into the playoffs, makes a Super Bowl, or even wins a Super Bowl, because our staff gets rated every time. I think if they wanted Jim Bob Cooter, that's a guy that would have been able to stay. We've never heard his name mentioned, as far as I know, in any head coaching searches. He was offensive coordinator with the Lions for 2 or 3 years, then came with us for a year, went to Indianapolis with Steichen. I think they went with the young guy because they want to go toward more the McVay, Shanahan type style offense. And there were rumors that the Kubiak guy that's going to be the Raiders' next head coach, more than likely, was probably going to take him to be his offensive coordinator, because he coached Mannion. He had him. And I think if things go sideways next year, I think that's going to be the last hurrah for Nick. I don't think they're going to extend Jalen this year. People were saying that he could get like a new deal or something like that. I don't think that's going to happen. I think they're going to let the chips fall where they may. And if things go great, so be it. We lose another offensive coordinator. And by saying great, I say we make another Super Bowl, or at least the NFC Championship next year. But if
that's the
things are
standard,
like if we just barely get that last playoff spot, or we don't make the playoffs, I think that they've got Mannion, a young guy who they really like, and I think that could be it for Nick, in my opinion. That's just, I was listening to Jack the other night. He was making some great points. When this offense and defense, with Fangio, he's been a head coach, and that's what we liked about him. We said, we've got this guy. He's going to be here. He's had his shot at being a head coach, but he's a Philly guy. He's a huge Phillies fan, and that's what they want. They want stability and continuity on both sides of the ball. But every time you get an offensive coordinator and you do well, they leave. And I really think this is a make or break year for Nick, as well as Jalen.
Yeah,
I really do. And
that's my next point. Yeah, definitely, because you think about it. There was that big debate after we won the Super Bowl. Is the season a prove it year for Jalen Hurts? And everyone was like, no, it's not a proven year. And we were the same. We were like, it's not a proven year for Jalen Hurts. He just won Super Bowl MVP. Came electric in the playoffs. Outplayed Patrick Mahomes again in the Super Bowl. So it was like, no way is it a proven year. Now, obviously, it turned out not to be a fantastic year for Jalen, but the whole team, the whole offense didn't have their best outing, and obviously Jalen Hurts has got his part to play in that. But he's not 100% to blame either. But this year, prove it year, definitely, I would say, because like you said, there's all the talk swirling now. Does Jalen get extended? They've already started talking about it on WIP, on other podcasts. Is Jalen, does he deserve that extension at the end of next year? So it's a massive prove year for Jalen Hurts. It's a massive prove year for Nick Sirianni, because Nick now is under the cosh again, where he's got to get this team rallied round. He's got to get them going again. That's his job as a CEO, head coach. Obviously we've heard different things here and there, that he's been involved in the offense at different times with Kevin Bertulo. I'd be surprised if he wasn't. So it's going to be really, really interesting now this next season of how Jalen and Nick can fix this thing with Sean Mannion. And I know Elliot has talked about like expectations for Sean Mannion. They should be low because obviously he's a young guy coming in, first time play caller, and I get his point. But obviously when you're with the Philadelphia Eagles and we've been to 2 Super Bowls in 3 years, we should have we should have 3 Super Bowls now instead of 2. The standard is really, really high for us now. You know what I mean? As it is for the likes of the Chiefs, as it is for the Rams, as it is for the New England Patriots now, possibly. You know what I mean? So when you get to that level of a couple of Super Bowls, it's like, no, the standard is to always go to the Super Bowl, the championship game at the very least. So it's you made some great points. It's definitely prove it years for those two guys.
And the thing, something I want to hit on too, quarterbacks can get better. They can't. We've seen it. We've seen it with Baker Mayfield. We've seen it with Sam Darnold. We were talking about Malik Willis earlier. Malik Willis went to a dumpster fire organization, the Tennessee Titans. When the draft came around that year, there was talk, could he be a first-round pick? He fell to the 4th round. All right. He fell to the 4th for a reason, obviously. He played at Liberty, not against great competition, stuff like that. He had a decent college coach in Hugh Freeze. But they're allowed to get better. I look back at Drew Brees' career earlier. When he was with the Chargers, they drafted Phillip Rivers. Drew Brees was a 2nd-round pick, I believe. He may have been the 1st pick in the 2nd round or something like that
that's right.
for the Chargers. But his career didn't take off until he got with Sean Payton and the Saints. He threw for over 3,000 yards with the Chargers, I think, every year but one, and he was injured. I think he only played 10, 11 games that year maybe. But they took a 1st-round pick. It was the Eli Manning, Phillip Rivers draft. They drafted Eli. Eli said he wouldn't go there. Then they made the trade, yada, yada, yada. But quarterbacks can get better. Players in general are allowed to get better once they get put in a right position with the right coaches. Now, hopefully, Sean Mannion can help develop Jalen, help build his confidence, help him to see like you can throw over the middle a lot. If you're not going to throw over the middle of the field, you're cutting the field in half. You're just using the outside edges, and they're going to funnel everything to the outside. But you can get better with better coaching and stuff like that. And I know Spike says this about Jalen. He's had a different offensive coordinator every year since he played at Alabama and everything. But something has got to give this year with him, man. It really does, in my opinion. You have to prove it this year, in my opinion. Yes, he won a Super Bowl, took us to 2, but it seems like since that 22 season, his stats have gone down. We heard all the talk about it. He didn't want to run as much this year. Man, him being a threat to run the ball last year is a big part of what helped Saquon get over 2,000 yards. People were scared of Jalen keeping it on that RPO. And it was like they weren't scared of it this year. They didn't care. They weren't respecting it because he wasn't doing it. And then word got out. And all year, they asked Lane early in the year, what do you see happening? It's just the offense in general. We've seen these players talk about it all year long. What was it? Was it Patullo? Was it Sirianni? Was it Jalen? I think it was a mixture of all 3, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And
that's what I sort of like about what's coming up this year, because, Jalen has tended to be get to his best when there's that doubt and when he comes off a losing type of season. You know what I mean? Like when he came in 2020, he had those 3-4 games stepping in for Carson Wentz, and didn't go great, but then we could see that potential. And in 2021 we got to 9-8. There was it wasn't fantastic, but that was sort of a write-off season. And then 2022 came alive, was amazing. Should have won the Super Bowl. 2023, he wasn't didn't protect the football enough, was careless with the throwing the ball. And then obviously 2024, he was much better. He went back to the old Jalen Hurts. So that's what I want Jalen to do this season now, is to keep that doubt. And I think he's going to have that fire there. I think the team will hopefully have that fire there. And I want to see Jalen go back to his classic Jalen Hurts way of playing. You know what I mean? Obviously, protect the ball, don't be careless, but go back to running with the ball. Like you said, just have that RPO threat. Have teams scared that Jalen is going to run the ball on us. So
Yeah.
yeah. Well, have you got some thoughts on that, Drew?
Yeah, so real quick to go back to one thing Justin said, because I know, I'm kind of, I'm like the quote unquote like Nick guy of the pod. So I agree. So I agree with you guys. I agree with you, Justin. Like, I do think like Nick's seat is probably hot. I think both their seats are probably
Yeah.
hot. I guess I just don't know if that's the most healthy way to run the franchise right now. Like, if we think about it, if Vic is coming back next year, which we believe he now is, I know they're going to lose a couple guys in free agency, but it's likely the defense will be pretty good. So if the team is, not good, or if the team like underachieves or, has like a similar season to this year or like a first round exit, I think it's likely due to the offense. So I guess it's just, it's like, could it happen? Yes. Like, it's hard now. Could that cost Nick his job? Yes. Just, it's hard for me to believe that if the offense isn't good, that Jeffrey would then promote Sean Mannion, who ran, say, like an average offense, to head coach, essentially. Now, like, so that, like, the to me, like, the biggest complicating factor is, like, I don't think it should necessarily be expected to be good next year, but like, to me, this feels like a 2-year project in terms of and all. And unfortunately, when you combine just like contracts and the business of the NFL with just like Jeffrey and Howie's, patience, I don't know that they have like a 2-year timeline to do that and to get the most out of the project. So I don't know. It just, that's the best way I can say it. It feels to me like they're in a really like weird spot
teams get
right
old
now.
quickly as well. That's the problem. You age very quick in the NFL.
Yes. Also, something else, like to piggyback on what Drew said, if the offense kind of struggles this year, but say they go 10-7, squeak into the playoffs, but they see improvements in the offense. Jalen looks better, but Mannion doesn't get any calls for head coaching positions after 1 year's offensive coordinator. I think Nick would be safe then. But if there's that's what I'm thinking. If there's a threat of them losing Mannion, that's when I could maybe see them be like, we're not going through this.
Could be in trouble.
We're not doing it again. We're not subjecting our quarterback. If, say, Jalen has a pretty good season, 3,000 yards passing or a little more, 25 passing touchdowns, 6-7 rushing touchdowns, keeps the interceptions low, and nobody's calling about Mannion, I think Nick's job will be safe. I do. He's never missed the playoffs. He's not. As much of the things that he does that frustrate me and get on my nerves, doing the arm bar with Patullo and all the smack talking, going to the locker room and stuff, and you got players looking at him like, really, man? I think if they get into the playoffs, and like I said, at 10-7 or 11-6, and maybe win a first round game and get knocked out in the second, I think his job would be safe. But if they don't make the playoffs, then that's where I think they could be like, okay, we're pulling the plug on this, because we can't stand to lose offensive coordinators year in and year out.
Yeah, that has become just, it is so frustrating every year. But, it's a good thing, it's a bad thing, because it shows how, it shows obviously that the team is playing well and you're doing everything right, because you've got these guys calling good plays, and but obviously then they're getting poached for head coaching jobs or poached for other coordinator positions in other teams, which is obviously not good for Jalen.
I also have a theory real quick about something Drew was saying about Fangio. We've still not heard 100% from him. We've seen reports, yes, he's coming back. And I won't feel good about him coming back until there's a presser or Fangio puts it out himself saying, I am coming back. But if he's coming back, is it just for one more year? And if it is, I think so. There may be something in motion, because we saw Jim Schwartz yesterday turn in his resignation with the Browns.
Yeah.
He's going to sit the season out, and that may be like the last year of his contract or something. So maybe they've told Vic, look, we have your successor in Jim Schwartz. can you come back for one more year? Because Schwartz
Yeah.
defense relies heavily on good cornerback play. And we won a Super Bowl with Jim Schwartz with Jalen Mills and Ronald Darby and Patrick Robinson in the secondary. He didn't have all pro guys like Quinyon Mitchell and Cooper DeJean in the secondary.
Regine, no.
You know, so
No.
I mean, I think and our defensive line would be, you know, Jalen Carter would be hell on wheels in that defensive front that Schwartz likes to play. Jordan
Yeah.
Davis, I'm not so sure about. Jordan Davis has improved greatly. His stamina's huge now. You know, he's got good stamina. He didn't slide off at the end of the season. He played well all year. And I don't know why Peloton hasn't signed him to an endorsement deal, because he talked about Peloton all off season and
Yeah.
everything else. But I think that could be something that's in motion already, guys, with Schwartz
Yeah.
turning in his resignation, because he would be blocked. He's still under contract. Same thing with like Stoutland, what Drew mentioned on Twitter. I wouldn't want to see the Eagles block him, but if they did, I wouldn't let him go to anybody in the NFC East. Let's put it that way. No Redskins,
Well, one
Cowboys,
thing
or Giants.
Yeah. I tell you one thing that really pissed me off these last few weeks was the Eagles letting Christian Parker, now the defensive backs coach, go to the Dallas Cowboys, but yet the Cowboys blocked us from interviewing one of their offensive staff, I think. And I'm not like, why didn't the Eagles do the same thing? Like, just to begin with, why you don't let one of your best defensive coaches go to an NFC East rival who's going to be probably, you know, good this year at the very least, who always play well against the Eagles, you know? So that really pissed me off, you know, because Dallas was smart enough, and they're not a smart organization to block us, but we didn't, you know what I mean? It was like, what are you doing? You don't do that, you know?
I think the thing there is, like Parker, it was going to be like a promotion. He's going from a DB coach to a defensive coordinator. Now, the guy that the Eagles were wanting to talk to, was it going to be for an offensive coordinator job? Because I don't think you can block somebody like interviewing for a job that's a step up. So it may have been a lateral move for this coach that the Eagles were wanting. I'm not sure about that, but
yeah,
you don't want to have that out there. If a guy has a shot at a promotion, that's going to keep other coaches from wanting to come to you.
Because now you've got all these rumors now that, like, you know, Nakobe Dean and Reed Blankenship could possibly join him in Dallas, and I mean that would make me sick to the stomach to see them two. Who I want the Eagles to keep them. I want the Eagles to find a way to retain them, and to see them then having to play in the Cowboys, that would make me sick to my stomach. So
I think sorry, Adam. Real quick.
Go on, Drew. No, go on.
I think that is correct as far as the rules go. Now you could maybe here's where I feel like it gets like very like legalese and like granular. Like you could argue that like offensive coordinator to the Cowboys to offensive coordinator to the Eagles is almost like a promotion, because I'm pretty sure Schottenheimer was calling plays with the Cowboys, and I think he would have been calling plays here. So I know the Eagles have I think have occasionally deployed that in the past, where I know coming after 2016 the Jets wanted to hire John DeFilippo, who we know was big in Carson's development, and the Eagles blocked that. So the Eagles have, I think, deployed that at times. But I'll be honest. Now I guess we do think Vic is coming back, so I know we keep touching on that. But if I'm Howie, you know, when like the reports started coming out like earlier this week, like I'm calling Christian Parker and I'm being like, hey Christian, like did you sign the contract yet? Did you not? Did you sign on the dotted line yet? Because if you didn't sign, like don't sign for a couple days kind of thing. So that's probably not on the table. But if it somehow was, theoretically, nothing would be stopping you from going back to that route. But no, I think the Schwartz idea is interesting. I don't love it, but I don't mind it. I think he and Vic kind of both have like similar, like, you know, for lack of a better term, like hard ass type personalities, where I think there wouldn't be a big transition to the players. So I think that could certainly be the case there.
So Drew, being our main stats guy and the best stats guy on the planet, Al Harris was interviewing for the Commanders' defensive coordinator position. I don't think he got it. Is Al Harris? Where is he? Is he the DB coach in Dallas, or where was he?
Yeah, I know so he had been with the Cowboys I think for a couple years, and I'm pretty sure there's been a lot of changes in the NFC East cuz the Commanders I'm pretty sure ended up hiring someone else. I want to say they hired someone with the Vikings.
Mm,
And then the obviously I think the Giants hired our old friend Denard Wilson, who I know the
Yeah.
players spoke kindly about in 2022. It looks to me, I'm looking it up now. I believe, and I think I saw this early in the season. I think Al Harris, it seems like this year was the DB coach for the Bears. And I know they,
Okay.
I want to say led the league in
mm.
interceptions or were really high up
Yes.
there. So, yeah, it's a good name.
So did we promoted from within for DB coach, correct? Didn't we do that once Parker
I,
left?
I think so. I think Joe
Okay.
Casper, who I'm pretty sure was the safeties coach, I think is
Okay.
now. So
Yeah,
it seems like
he's
he
gone
with
across.
Christian were maybe
Yeah.
split some
Okay.
responsibilities is now the DB coach. Yeah.
So that's what I was about to say. Try to go after Al Harris because he's been getting defensive coordinator interviews and stuff like that. I speaks highly of Al Harris, and
Mm,
like y'all said, the Bears led the league in interceptions this year. Al Harris is a hell of a DB's coach, but that would be a lateral
yeah.
move too, so he would probably get blocked from that.
So speaking of obviously some defense and patience and all that, obviously, I don't know how I only just caught some of this before we started the pod today. So AJ Brown, AJ Brown once again, he's on his off-season media tour. So he was on a podcast, I think maybe yesterday or earlier today, maybe with Micah Parsons and Bryce Young, and he's spoken about that he's excited to stay in Philly. Apparently, Philly is his home. He's looking forward to working with the new coaching staff. He defended Kevin Patullo over some things that happened with the offense. And then I heard another point that Micah Parsons come out with, relating back to the defense, is that when the Eagles were trying to trade for Micah Parsons, that they tried possibly, I don't know how true, Micah Parsons could be talking out of his rear end, you know what I mean, about this, he could be correct, that apparently Jalen Carter was in the package, so do a sort of a straight swap for Jalen Carter for Micah Parsons. So my question to you guys is, do you buy what AJ Brown is coming out with now that all of a sudden he's happy, he didn't want to be traded from Philly is his home, this, that, and the other? And do you think Jalen Carter was on the trading block? Obviously, because they've got to decide next year now whether to pay Jalen Carter, and obviously after his antics once again this year, he spat at Dak Prescott. I think him doing that at the very first game of the season sort of like put this, not like curse on us, but it got us off to like a really bad sort of like juju, like just like it just gave me a really bad feeling when that happened. So it's, do the Eagles pay him now going forward? So do you think they tried to trade Jalen Carter for Micah Parsons? Would you guys have done it? And do you buy everything that's coming out of AJ Brown's mouth? So I'll start with you, because obviously we've been highly critical of AJ Brown at times on this podcast. So how are you feeling about that?
I think AJ Brown's as full of shit as a Christmas turkey. That's my bottom line on AJ Brown. AJ Brown's doing what he's been told, saying what he's been told to say to help facilitate a trade. He's not going to come out bad mouthing. I think they're going to move on from AJ Brown, and the best thing that can happen tomorrow is the Seahawks beat the ever living hell out of the Patriots. So the Patriots feel the need; they need to step up and go after AJ Brown, Mike Vrabel's guy. Vrabel was pissed when they traded AJ Brown to us. And you know what? A lot of players really love Mike Vrabel. He's a player's coach. They like Will Compton. I don't know how much you guys pay attention to Bussing with the Boys, but Taylor Lewan and Will Compton love Mike Vrabel. My friend down here, he's a kid. He's like 24, 25. He's a Titans fan, but he loved Mike Vrabel. I think that the Bills and the Patriots could possibly be the two biggest contenders for an AJ Brown trade. But AJ's doing what AJ has to do to help facilitate the trade. You're not going to come out and say, I'm tired of this junk, I want out, because the Eagles would just be like, okay, we'll send your ass to Oakland, not Oakland, but to Las Vegas to play for the Raiders, or ship your ass off to somewhere that ain't worth a broke dick. So I think AJ's doing what he's been told to do by by the organization and by his agents to help facilitate the trade so the Eagles can get the very most they can get for A.J. Brown. That's what I'm thinking on. I'm done with this guy. He loafed his ass off all season. We've seen him quit on routes. We've seen him quit on blocks. Yeah, you got us a Super Bowl. Thank you, bud, but you're gone. I'm over it. I'm sick and
Yeah.
tired of it. If the Pats want to give me a second in Kayshon Boutte or a third in Kayshon Boutte, done deal. You know,
It's very convenient
if
timing.
if
With the
if
Super Bowl
Dickerson
tomorrow.
if Dickerson retires, if he does retire, we're looking at possibly getting 2 new offensive linemen. If Lane and Dickerson retire, and none of us really sold on Steen this year. Like
No.
when it came out that Becton was probably going to be released by the Chargers, we're like, bring him home. Well, obviously Becton can't play for anybody but Stoutland, so that's a wash. You know, so
possibly.
whoever gives us the best deal. Yeah, whoever gives us the best deal. But I'm done with A.J. Brown. Thank you for the Super Bowl, but you weren't fulfilled by winning the damn Super Bowl, so hasta la vista.
Yeah,
baby.
there's that as well. Yeah. How you feeling? We'll move on. I'll get on to. I want to obviously get on to the Phillies. So we'll so Drew, give us your thoughts on the AJ Brown and Micah Parsons, saying that it could have been a straight swap for Jalen Carter. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, I think AJ, it came off very, to Justin's point, very like word salady to me. It was almost felt to me like kind of like in like the corporate world, the equivalent of like when a colleague asks you a question and like you don't like totally like know the answer, but you kind of just have to like, you know, talk around it and all, and kind of get and kind of just like build some like fluff for a minute or two. I think, I'd put the chances of AJ being back at below 20%. I don't think it's zero, but I just think it's. I think I've said this maybe on a previous pod. He could say he wants to be here all he wants. I just can't trust if, say, you know, opening week, say, you know, we're losing 6-3 to Arizona at halftime. I just can't trust that he's not going to explode on the sideline. Like we've just done like boy you cried wolf
exactly
too many times there. The Jalen Carter one is interesting. I don't think I wouldn't have done the deal. I think we have to remember that Jalen Carter's, you know, stock was like very, very high like 9 months ago. Like people were talking about him, you know, potentially being a defensive player of the year candidate. So my gut says it would have taken some additional compensation in the form of draft picks too. So I guess if you asked me at the time, I wouldn't have done it. To me, I guess the big takeaway there to me is I think it shows that, you know, Howie is willing to, which is what we appreciate Howie. He's willing to be creative. He's willing to take big swings, where Justin has brought up this name in the past. Now, I don't think I would do it this year because I don't have like Super Bowl or bust expectations next year. And I think you need the draft picks. But the first thing I thought of was, if you were interested in trading for Micah so much, they could conceivably be interested in trading for a guy like Max Crosby, who it sounds like is going to be on the block. So that's kind of my big takeaway from that rumor.
Yeah, they're going to have to. I mean, they tried a couple of times, obviously, if they did try to get Micah Parsons that badly, and we know that they tried to get Myles Garrett. So they definitely need something to happen at edge, because we saw the drop off this year again. Obviously, I know Nolan Smith played good the Super Bowl year, but he had a drop off this year. You know, J-Lux Hunt improved a little bit, but he wasn't really a nightmare on those edges. You know what I mean? You could see the struggles in the pass rush game this year around the edge for the defense. So yeah, they're going to have to try and make something there, and or hope they, you know, do something in the draft that's like, you know, some guy just comes out and blows everyone out of the water like Micah Parsons did, you know. So I want to move on to the Phillies, obviously, before we wrap up the show. And obviously, and two general managers that are obviously not in good favor in Philly at the moment: Dave Dombrowski and Daryl Morey for the Sixers. Dave Dombrowski, obviously the Phillies general manager. So the Phillies, you know, it's been a tough off season. Again, you know, they brought in Adolis Garcia, you know, another $10 million player, dollar player, who's had a bit of a, you know, decline. since 2023. He's going to be in right field, so sort of like a Max Kepler vibe type signing. So we've seen Brandon Marsh and Otto Kemp are going to be platooning in left field. So that's fantastic. Can't wait to see that. Justin Crawford is going to be playing centre field, even though he hasn't played much of centre field, but they feel he can do it. So it's going to be interesting to see what Crawford can do. Aiden Miller is potentially coming up. I don't think he's going to come up at the start of the season. I think they're going to, see how he does in the Iron Pigs, because obviously he came up to AAA quite late last year. So I think they're going to want to see how he looks in AAA. Andrew Painter has got to come up now, especially with the way the starting rotation is looking. We ain't got Ranger Suarez, and Aaron Nola and Christopher Sanchez. I think Christopher Sanchez has been forced into pitching for the Dominican Republic for the World Baseball Classic. I don't think he necessarily wanted to originally. But Aaron Nola thinks it's a great idea to go pitch for Italy in the World Baseball Classic, which I don't think is a great idea since he was hurt most of last year and come off and not a fantastic season overall. So what's your guys' thoughts on obviously everything that's recently transpired with the Phillies? Drew, I'll start with you, because obviously there's not a lot of excitement. Obviously, I can't wait for baseball to come back. I love baseball. I cannot wait for spring training. So what is it in terms of this year? Just like, let's just see what happens. Let's just be happy that baseball is back, or are there World Series expectations? Because for me, there isn't World Series expectations. I just want to see what happens, enjoy the moments, and go from there.
Yeah, it's kind of sad because, to your point, like, I love like the lead up to baseball. Like, opening day is my like favorite day on the year, just because it doesn't
Yeah,
come with the same stress as that Eagles first game. It's
yeah,
very much just like
yeah,
enjoy and like hope springs eternal kind of thing. And at the same time, this Phillies team just has so much baggage right now, where it feels like it's just like dragging them down and dragging the vibes down,
yeah.
where it's hard to totally embrace that. I said after the Mets signed Bichette, I remember, I think even before like the JT signing came out, like, I think one of the things I put on Twitter was like, at this point, like, I'd rather take a pause year, let the kids come up, let like Taiwan's contract come off the books, like Casty fully come off the books, let, Alec Boehm walk in, next off season,
Oh,
and then, let the
yeah,
lockout play out, and
he's
then bad
back.
name to bring up, and then, we'll just like see where we're at and go back at this. Now, obviously they did not do that. Look, could they have a good season? Sure, but I just think, if you think about, I think this national, and I know we'll get into it in like future pods more, but I think this National League is very good. And if we for a second assume the Phillies are not going to win the division, because for what it's worth, I probably would not pick them to right now. I would probably pick the Mets or the Braves. So
Oh,
that's a
yeah,
playoff team. Obviously, the Dodgers are making the playoffs. That's two playoff teams. And then you have the division winner from the Central. So you have three right there. And then you're in a whole mix of kind of jockeying for spots with what I think are some pretty good clubs, between, like the Padres, who have had a pretty good offseason. I think the Giants, who have had a pretty decent offseason. Whoever doesn't win the Central, between the Cubs or the Brewers. So I think
yeah,
it could be a real dogfight for them to, for them to make the playoffs. Now that can be, that in a way, that can be a good thing. If you have to, like, that to me is the one thing that they could maybe latch on to this year. If you have to fight your way through September, and you kind of can like be able to like brand yourself as like a scrappy underdog and go in hot, that can be, at like 2022, that can be a thing you can kind of latch on to. But yeah,
yeah,
I just feel like they're in a tough spot over uh, uh I just feel like they're in a tough spot overall there, where, and and I think I lost my train of thought for a second, but just to close it, I think some people like not misremember, but the drop off from, like what feels like kind of like parallel paths right now, when they lost in heartbreaking fashion in 2011, like the fall off to 2012 was quick. I don't think people, like Roy Halladay is all of a sudden hurt, and the core gets older and is injured, and you very well could have like we have no idea how Zach Wheeler is going to come back from
Yeah.
this injury. He's been a wonderful Philly. I hope for his sake he's good. That's a really tough injury to come back from. I just think there's a couple kind of like variable like grenades here that could like really blow this up and send this down a spiral, I think, quicker than folks might be anticipating.
Yeah. Jess, are you looking forward to seeing Casti and Bone back?
No, I'm not. But something real quick before I touch on Bone, I am just shocked that they didn't sign Harrison Bader after things. I know they want Crawford to play center field, but Bader can play left, and if Crawford struggles in center, then you can put Bader back in center, put Crawford back in left. Bader wanted to be here, and I know a lot of people saying, well, Bader was kind of, he is what he is, but he's a really good defensive center fielder. It was like he brung some attitude or something into that clubhouse, like a little bit of cockiness, a little bit of swag, and he wanted to be there. He's shocked that he's not a Philly, And it started for me with the Bichette thing. Like they thought they had him, and they never had him. They never had him the whole time. And a lot of people said, has the game passed by Dombrowski? With everybody wanting these, 3-year deal with a player opt out after each season, stuff like that. So with Bone, I think Bone's going to do the most Bone thing ever this year, and he's going to come out and he's going to hit like 280, 285 and hit 20, 23 home runs or something like that. And they're going to be like, well, we can't let this guy walk. He's finally coming into his own because it's a contract year and everything.
I don't care if it's 50 home runs. Let him walk.
I guarantee you that's what's going to happen. He's going to hit 20 to 25 home runs and probably have like 80, 90 RBI, something like that. And they're going, we can't let this guy walk. He's homegrown, and look what he done. He's finally turning into something, and then he's going to go back. The Cinderella's going to turn back into a pumpkin after it's over. But I'm like, I'm like Drew. I'm just looking forward to baseball season. I was actually going to wear a baseball hat and shirt, but you know what? Damn it, we're still champions today. We're still defending champions today. We've got one more day.
36 more
hours. Why I said, yes, sir.
Yeah.
That's why I said, you know what? I'm breaking out the Eagles gear one more time. We're still champs. We done it. Nobody can take it away from us. But I think it's going to be tough for the Phils to make the playoffs. But like what Drew said, when you have to fight for it, when it's not as easy, maybe that makes it tougher. That's what happened when they made that World Series run. It was tougher that year. They had to come together and fight for one another and everything else. But when are they going to get Casti off this team? They cannot start spring training with Castellanos still on this team. Give me a bag of balls or whatever.
He's back. I'm with Spike. I think he's back. Nobody wants him. Nobody wanted Alec Bohm. Nobody wants Nick Castellanos. They just don't want these guys. And I think he's back. What can you? They can't. I mean, if they can release him, but then they got to eat all that money, and they really don't want to eat that $20 million or whatever it is. So I know it's getting closer and closer to spring training, and I think at the very least he will. Maybe he won't be there with them in spring training, but I think he'll still be on the roster, definitely.
I don't know. It's a mess. It really is. Like it feels like they really fumbled the offseason because it felt like they were going to make moves. Everybody had hope they were going to get Bichette and this guy and that guy, and then what do? They give a 35-year-old catcher a 3-year deal. That the pitchers love him. But you could have got, I forget the guy's name that James and Jack kept talking about. You could have got him for $5 million a year and then signed Bader to a 2-year deal. And I don't know. It's a damn mess.
At the end of the day, like to me, they could have signed these guys if they wanted them, because John Middleton has talked for years. I'm going to do everything I can to get my effing trophy back and this, that, and the other. But ever since he's said that, it hasn't gone that way in terms of off season. You know what I mean? Like I know they brought in Trey Turner and what have you, and Trey didn't look like the World Baseball Classic Trey Turner at the beginning. But I know last year he had a good year. He was probably one of the best hitters on the team last year. You know, but that top three all went cold again in the playoffs,
Yep.
like they tend to do. So you know, the money is there. Baseball, you know, there's not going to be a salary cap in baseball because they're not going to want everyone going on strike. You know, they'd be stupid to let that happen. So it's just a real shame. And the thing with like Zach Wheeler, it's like, you know, Christopher Sanchez has to be your ace at the start of the season, but yet you're going to let him go and pitch in the World Baseball Classic when originally he said he didn't want to pitch in the World Baseball Classic because he had a lot more innings this year, because he had
Yep.
to be the ace at the end of the season for Zach Wheeler. You know, he had to play an extra game against the Dodgers, and now they're going to and now he's been forced into it somehow. And it's like, just what a disaster. There was that left-handed pitcher from the Houston Astros that we could have signed. Framber Valdez, is it? Yeah.
Pitched great against the Phils in the World Series.
Yep.
Yeah, he's gone now. I can't remember who signed him a couple of days ago.
He's Tigers teaming up with Skubal.
The Tigers
seems like they're going to try.
I mean, they've got a lot better now with Skubal. They've still got Skubal.
Drew's guy. Where did he go? Brendan Donovan.
Brendan Donovan got traded to the Mariners, who were obviously
that's what
a game away from
that was
Drew's
guy
as well.
That was Drew's guy during the whole trade deadline. You know, it's done. Like I don't know that there's any moves can be made. I mean, this is the team that you're coming back with. And who are you more shocked that's still on the roster at this point, Drew? Orion Kirkering or Nick Castellanos?
Ooh, that's a fun isn't the right word, but that's that's a question. So I don't think Casti will be on the team. Now, obviously, we are not a pod that, you know, we don't wish, you know, like injury or harm on other players.
No.
But I think the Phillies' hope is that typically when like all the teams report to camp, there's usually like a guy who it gets found they have like an injury where they're going to miss some time, or, you know, something happens where my gut says the Phillies are holding out hope, you know, that they, you know, some team is desperate and they can, you know, trade Casti and just pay part of the contract. And if not, I do think they'll release him. Now, the kind of like down, so I don't think he will be on the opening day roster. But the downside to that is, like, do you really want that as like a distraction in your camp? Like everyone asking questions every day, you know, like I can't think of the last time a team told like an active player to like straight up not report to camp. So that will be an interesting. So that would be an interesting deal to watch. So I guess, I guess, you know, the short answer would be Casti, but yeah, with Kirkering, and I'll choose words like carefully here, because I know I put something out on Twitter, you know, like after like the Dodgers series happened, that, you know, I wasn't shocked because he had, you know, has had unfortunately messed up in the playoffs a bunch before, and like a bunch of people jumped down my throat. I hope he has, which we know obviously is classic Twitter. I hope he has a very good career. I think it would be better off being with the Chicago White Sox, the Colorado Rockies, the Pittsburgh Pirates. I just don't think this is a good idea to have him back, and that I think fans will give him the ovation and like try to support him and react positively. I think it goes back to the theme of baggage, and I don't think this is a good idea.
It's the definition of insanity, and you know, doing the same thing over and over again, you know, and just like it's so. Before we end, I want to, obviously I said at the start I wanted to like find some positivity and get some humor. So just to top things off, and I'm going to let Justin take the lead with this, because he brought it up before in our pre-show meeting. Just to end things with a good laugh, because we need a good laugh. Daryl Morey with the 76ers. And we don't talk a lot of basketball in this pod, even though we are 76ers guys, and you know, but you know, the Sixers have unfortunately just been in the closet for a long time, and they're just a complete and utter mess. And Josh, if this isn't a sign that Josh Harris needs to sell the team now, I don't know what is, because Daryl Morey this week trades a really good up-and-coming young player, Jaron McCain, and I know he took a bit of a dip this year off and on. You know, he's getting sent down to the blue coats, but when he's come back up, he's put on some good performances. So just give us your thoughts on the whole Daryl Morey trade debacle that he did with these picks.
So, everybody that's ever listened to us or watched us knows I'm not a basketball guy. I could care less about the NBA now. I think they killed a golden goose. But anyway, when they traded Jaron McCain, everybody was like, okay, this is the first move. You know, they're getting picks where they can load up and go get Giannis. They're, probably going to trade Paul George and VJ and go get Giannis and make a run at this thing. And you trade probably your best shooter on the team, according to Spike. I don't watch the 76ers, but I'm a loyal listener to WIP Afternoons, and Spike is a huge Sixers fan, as we all know. And then they don't make any moves. And it looks like they made this move to where they don't have to pay the luxury tax or whatever it is. And this guy was a first, I think he was a 15 overall pick, something like that, top 15
Sounds
somewhere.
right.
Yeah.
And you get the 20, what you're probably going to be getting is a 20th something pick. You sent this guy to the lottery last year to pull the card out showing what pick you were going to have. And you trade him to the best team in the NBA in the Oklahoma City Thunder. And then Daryl Morey comes out and says, well, we made that move hoping we could use that to get somebody else. You don't make that move until you have a deal with somebody else saying, okay, if you give us this, this, and this, we're gonna give you Giannis or whomever it was they were looking to do. Why would you do that?
Yeah.
How stupid are you? I mean, listen to Spike Eskin go off the other day was absolute hilarity, because he threw his damn back out. He was screaming and ranting and raving so damn bad. He was madder than a wet hen. And I'm telling you, that is the stupidest excuse I have ever heard any GM ever make. Well, we made this deal so hoping we could use that to get somebody else. You didn't get shit, but just bamboozled. You got hoodwinked and smoked, and you shit the bed, son.
And the more laughable thing about all this is that this has happened after the Paul George suspension. Okay.
Yes.
Now, I know Paul George and Jaron McCain don't play the same position and what have you, but Paul George goes and gets himself suspended for 25 games. He's going to lose like $15 million. And it was at a time where the Sixers are starting to look half decent. There's that potential where they could, won't have to be in the play-in tournament this year. And Paul George was relatively playing okay, not amazing, but it seemed like he was getting into a bit of a rhythm. Now, I know it was all to do with mental health and what have you, but like Spike said earlier this week, that's what you go to the NBA for. You go to the league commissioners and you go to, it's a massive organization. You go there and you say, look, I've got this issue. What medications can I take? This, that, and the other.
Yes.
And Rhea Hughes made a good point on the morning show the other day that Paul George has been around the block he's been around a long time in the NBA. He knows what you can take, what you can't. He's had a lot of injury history. So how the hell this happens, is mind-boggling. And then you go and trade Jaron McCain for nothing that ended up in return. I know you got some first-round picks and this and the other, but you've got to wait to use them now. You know what I mean? And you don't know what's going to happen with that because you wanted to get someone that you obviously were bamboozled into think you could get, with Giannis or whoever else they were looking at. Just an absolute disaster. And yeah, it's just laughable. So
it is. It's
I don't know if you've got any
man.
quick thoughts before we finish things off.
Yeah, if we want to put some not good tasting icing on the cake, the Flyers are very likely to miss the playoffs for the sixth straight season, and there appear to be major questions about what was supposed to be the centerpiece of the rebuild. And I have not followed like the nuances close enough to have deep thoughts there, but it's been a rough month, and everyone tonight go, watch clips of Cooper DeJean's pick six and, Devontae catching the dagger, hopefully, and everyone can, feel a little better going
especially
into tomorrow.
Yeah. So, I mean, before we head off, you guys want to do quick Super Bowl picks before we wrap up? I'll start. Obviously, the Seahawks and the Patriots, they're in the Super Bowl tomorrow. It's going to be an interesting matchup because they both got good defenses. The Seahawks, I would say, have the more explosive offense. I know one of their running backs is injured. Chardonnay, is it Chardonnay? Chardonnay, I think you
Zach
say.
Charbonnet.
Yeah, he's out, but you still got Kenneth Walker. They've got Jackson Smith and Jigba, that wide receiver from Corey's Ohio State. So I would say unless the Patriots can find a way to get to Sam Darnold and take him out early, because I know he's still battling with that oblique injury, I'd say my pick would be the Seahawks. Obviously, just because of how Drake May has looked in the playoffs, he hasn't been high scoring. Maybe that changes tomorrow. I don't know, but I'd say my pick would be the Seahawks. Just, you want to go next? And then Drew.
Yeah, I'm taking the Seahawks. That defense is ridiculous. Drake May's struggled in the playoffs thus far, what we've seen. Had a lot of turnovers. That first playoff game that they played. I think the Seahawks win. That defense is just, like I said, they're playing out of their mind. They're killing people. I think Seahawks win. I'm gonna say 27-20, something like that. Hopefully, that's what I'm hoping for. That way, it can make the Patriots say, "Hey, we need a top flight receiver like an AJ Brown to go with this other crazy receiver, Stephon Diggs." Yeah, and I think Seahawks win. I'm never rooting for the Patriots. Them some bitches cheated us out of a Super Bowl, the first one in 2004. And a lot of people have. I'll go on this tangent real quick. A lot of people fussed about Belichick and Kraft not making it into the Hall of Fame. That being part of it. Well, they burned those damn tapes for a reason. Those tapes were destroyed for a reason. There was so much cheating going on with them bastards. I'm not saying they don't deserve to go in, but they're not deserving of first ballot Hall of Fames, in my opinion. Yeah, he's won all these Super Bowls, but how much cheating did he do to win them? I hate the damn Patriots.
Yeah.
Patriots can suck a back half, in my opinion.
Drew, what's your pick for tomorrow?
I know their whole kind of existence is miserable, but can you imagine being a Jets fan tomorrow? Like the choices are either your former supposed to be franchise savior wins it, or the Pats win, or the Pats win another one. If we think we've had a rough month, and we have.
Yeah.
I'll go. I'm gonna go the other way and go the Patriots. We've talked about Vrabel a little bit on the pod. I trust him to have the team. I trust him to have the team prepared, and it kind of reminds me of that 2001 Super Bowl where the first Patriots team were underdogs to the Rams and the greatest show on turf. Where I think they can force a turnover or two. I think they can kind of get in the mud a little bit and kind of make it a dogfight type of game. It's not the most fun bet in the world, because typically if you're if your team's not in it, I feel like you like offense, but I kind of feel like the under could hit in this game, and I think I like the Patriots to win a 20-17 type of game. That I don't think it'll be the most exciting Super Bowl in the world, but I think it could be a fun fourth quarter and a close game. After
definitely.
the amazing blowout we saw last year.
Yeah, could definitely be
real quick before we go.
Defensive Super Bowl.
Yeah, real quick before we go, for y'all that didn't listen to Spike and Ike and Jack interviewing Fletcher Cox on Thursday, definitely go back and catch that. Fletcher Cox hating on the 22 team.
This is a good one.
and personally, probably a certain player we all knew he was probably talking about in Hassan Reddick, chasing after stats and everything. But like we said, we're still champions for one more day, boys. And tomorrow I'm reliving this beauty. I've still got this was the last Blu-ray of the Super Bowls that they ever made from 52. I'm going to go back and watch it again. I'm going to watch the 30 for 30 again. I'm going to watch America's game things again. I'm going to be all eagled up, and then hell with it after that. It's on the baseball. Well, hell with it. It's on the draft season, my favorite time of the year, and then baseball season.
Yeah, we'll have some draft pods coming out, definitely. Yeah. So, Yeah, thanks everyone. Give us a like, a follow, and subscribe, and enjoy what's left of the Eagles as the Super Bowl champs tomorrow. Because then it's all going to come to an end. There'll be a new champion, so I'll definitely be doing the same, enjoying some Eagles Super Bowl stuff tomorrow. And we'll have another Phillies pod coming soon to prepare for opening day and see how spring training. And then we'll get into the weeds with a couple of draft pods then, because I know Justin and Drew can't wait to get that going, and we'll get Corey back on with us. I know he's a big draft guy as well, so can't wait to do them draft pods. So we'll have them in a few weeks as we get closer to the draft.
Yes,
so
sir.
yeah, thanks both once again, and it was a good one, a lot of fun today. I hope we've made some people laugh who tune in for us. So yeah, and until next time, go Birds.
Go Birds. Love y'all, man.
Go Birds.